I'm Shane Nyland, and my co-host is Blake Musser. And these stories you're about to hear are from Weapons Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 1st Marine Division, about the events surrounding and directly from the mouths of the people who were in Ramadi 2004. This is part 2 of our interview with the Weapons Company Executive Officer, Lucas Wells.
Well, as you're laying this out, and I hear, what I heard from Lieutenant Dobb and talking to some other people too, is absolutely incredible what we were able to do with how little information we were given at any given time.
Amazing.
Well, historically, it's what Marines have always been asked to do, right? Here's a shit sandwich, make it taste good, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well,
what about the tank? I would like to hear that story. Who's out there? Whiskey too?
Yeah. I have not. I've tried not to make too many of these podcasts about myself too much, but Sakaki talked a little bit about that tank. Were you out there for that one? I don't remember you being attached to us.
No, but I was in the COC.
Yeah.
A little main gun round. Huh?
Yeah, we were supposed to be doing a snap VCP. We were told there was people that were going to be coming down Michigan. We were as far out past the arches to where we were basically at the edge of our AO, rubbing up against the tank unit, apparently, that was covering Habanilla. And we had 4 dismounts out on the south side of Michigan. The rest of us had gone. There was a berm, and so we had hidden the vehicles down a berm and behind a little bit of brush, but not really. Anybody with any kind of optics should have been able to see the vehicles. But from just driving down the road, the headlights wouldn't have skylined it, but we didn't see any cars either, so that didn't really matter. Anyway, we were out there for hours. Nothing going on. People just kind of whispering and talking and whatever. And I was standing next to the vehicle and had just lit up a cigarette and was trying to hide it by smoking it inside of a pop can. And Sakaki was standing there talking to me, and we thought it was an RPG, right? No, we didn't know. We didn't expect it to be a main gun tank round. Come straight down the road, right in between the dismounts and our vehicle, and the shockwave from it was enough to knock Sakaki off his feet and me over. And Sakaki's a big dude, and so it was, close enough to do that. And it struck the ground behind us next to the wall. And immediately everybody started shooting back at it. And nobody knew, we didn't even know what we were shooting at. We were just shooting at the direction that we thought it came from. And my gunner was McCabe, and he was a machine gunner by trade, but he jumped on the tow sight and turned on the thermal and looked. And he's like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Can I shoot it? And I was like, no. And it hadn't quite fired up yet. I just jumped on the hood of the truck and jumped over and jumped down into the turret and looked, and I'm like, that's an Abrams. and everybody's like, what? And then I started cracking off Red Star clusters, and that's when we heard the engine, the distinct jet turbine fire up and them start driving down the road. I thought Hardin and JD were going to actually kill that crew. I really did. I'm glad they didn't. I thought they were going to, because everybody had their guns pointed at the tank the whole time, even after we knew it was an American tank. And they popped the hatch, and both of them jumped on top of that tank and were screaming at them. And JD was screaming at the commander. And I was like, just don't kill him, right? Punch him, whatever. I don't give a shit. Don't shoot him. And we took pictures, and I remember calling back, and I don't remember if you answered the radio or who did, but whoever it was didn't believe us. They're like, are you sure? I'm like, I'm looking right at it. I'm looking right at it. And we came back, and I remember everybody else was cleaning up trucks and getting ready to draw down for the night. It was, whatever it was, 2, 3 in the morning. And then going over to the battalion headquarters and showing them the pictures of the tank. And then they went and grabbed, because they had shot it. Miranda was there. Miranda came over, and he was, he was mad. Everybody was mad. And they're like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, not get shot at again. That's what I want. I want to
Yeah, that's
not,
what we want.
I want to be able to talk to these people on the radio so I don't get shot at again. I don't know what the hell happened. I heard later that somebody was on an airplane, evac for whatever reason, and the driver, I believe, of that tank got evac'd at the same time. And they said the only way they knew it was Marines is because we fired back immediately. Otherwise, they would have kept shooting, and that the gunner had, yep, that the gunner had chosen to fire the main gun round off center a little bit, and but he could see the guys, the dismounts that we had, and he thought he saw them digging on the road. I find that surprising personally, just because the optics on the Abrams are the actual best optics organic to the ground at the time.
Right.
You should have been able to see good enough detail to know they were digging. Yeah. But either way,
yeah,
it worked out.
Yeah. But that was a crucial example that kind of highlights there was a total disconnect at the company level, even as far as communication past those AOs or even on the boundaries of those AOs.
Yep.
And thank goodness for that one that they missed. And so I think all that shit kind of eased that back. I think the Army figured out after that, like, okay, just don't even do anything anywhere close to the Marines AO. So that maybe save some lives in the future.
Right.
On that shit.
There was multiple friendly fire incidents, and was always surprised there were not any significant casualties on either side.
Yeah.
Which is good, but very surprising.
Yep.
For you personally, was there anything, kind of dialing it back? I mean, obviously Battle of Ramadi is things that are talked about often, but anything after that kind of stands out to you?
Yeah, of course, you talk about that little lull, and then we have Savage there in May. And it was really crazy. And how we just immediately went back to this, say we're going to go back to like propping up the local economy and getting the workers going. Because that's what we were doing out there for the bunch of those days during that time, including the day on Nova that Savage was killed, was doing that water pump at a school and going looking at the other guys painting the other ones and coming back. So it's really crazy that we were like, oh yeah, I guess we're still going to do all that shit. That was a shitty day, of course. I don't know why we didn't just destroy that whole corner of Gypsum and Nova. We should have just gotten rid of that whole intersection. It would have saved us a lot of, because that where Savage got hit was right there. And like how much stuff went down.
That was where
on Nova for sure, but that intersection, it was like kind of elevated up the thing. It was just a magnet, like probably been used for hundreds of years of them ambushing people there.
I remember having a pucker factor anytime we had to drive through that area.
Yep.
Yeah. The half doors. I remember we used to say, "Oh, it's time to put the elbows in," like as you do, like with Texas, and you have your elbow hanging out the side of the pickup truck and stuff. Like, oh, might as well put them in here for this little stretch.
Yep.
And then again, by that time, they didn't bury that one nearly as deep as they used to. That was a huge crater, and that was a hard blow to take that day, and just kept adding on to the frustration, I think, of constantly putting that much money out. I don't know how many millions of dollars we gave out in the city. It was like a directive to like, hey, we're pumping this many millions of dollars in there. I had to go to Blue Diamond one time because I was like the construction officer guy and sit in this big meeting with this major like accountant, like a admin guy, major from Blue Diamond, and he gives us all 10 grand cash each, and it was for like, if you messed up somebody's property, you're supposed to give them a little bit, and payoffs for this and that, and use a little bit to buy stuff for the things. And then we're fixing to leave, and I remember going like, and he's like, by the way, it's 10 grand in cash, and I'd never seen 10 grand in cash at that point, and he hands it to you, and you got it in your cargo pocket, and he's like, by the way, that's the Marine Corps' money, and anything's not accounted for specifically, you'll be personally liable to pay that back. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, are you telling me if I drive out here today and I get my fucking leg blown off, you're gonna come after my mom for this 10 grand? And he's like, you need to shut up, Lieutenant, something like that. I'm like, yeah, it is like that. Have you been out the wire? And he's like, well, I go out sometimes. And I just remember the first time I had that money, we go out with map one, and like, I forget which sergeant comes up, and then he says it to Crawford. Crawford comes up to me, and he's like, "Hey, we kind of messed up this guy's truck, and we need to like give him some. Can we give him some of that money to like make it? We didn't mean to. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. We totaled his little Opal or whatever. And I'm like, sure. Here's a little form. You got to get the guy to sign it." And Crawford's like, okay. And he takes it and he hands it to somebody, and then they came back like 10 minutes later, and they're like, "Nah, we can't get him to sign it." And I'm like, I'm so sick of it. I'm like, listen, I realize it's stupid. Don't care. Just get him to sign this little chit for $100 bill, right? And then they come back and they still like can't do it. And now I'm like, what did I say, man? Just you got to get him to sign it. It's not that big a deal. And then they brought the guy around the corner, and the Humvee had run over his whole truck and his whole car, and he had just barely gotten out, and it had broken both of his hands on his wrist, and both hands were just flopping like with a bone exposed. And it's like, you can't sign it. I'm like, all right, I get it. You can't sign it. We'll just make his mark. It was like, after that, we're like, screw this. Like, they have no idea what's going on. Such pencil pushing in the face of those kind of deals. But that really started to get old. Still having to have that front face to those guys and giving them all this ridiculous money for projects that didn't, they were ripping it. It'd be like a $300 like paint job on a school, and you'd pay $10,000.
Yes. Yeah.
And you couldn't negotiate with them. Like the directive was like, give them way too much more money than it's worth. And you're like, man,
I was there when you guys paid off the guy that put the roof on the hooches and stuff like that, and I was like, what is even happening?
Yeah,
that was stupid. It was just so stupid.
And it starts to really get in your graw, like, hey, man.
And to my understanding, reading some of the books about the history, is we gave out half or less of how much money was being given out before we even got there. Like they had been distributing some money to the local sheikhs, and I was like, that we did 50% because we were giving out a ton. Yeah,
that's why they were just kicking it in there. They were just paying off all the sheiks or whatever, and watching movies.
Nice.
So I don't know. We had a different plan.
We did.
Let's see. So that'd be May.
So I have one memory of you specifically from May, and this may jog your memory a little bit. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. And it may not be. I mean, you may not remember too much of it, but maybe you do. We had done that op where we were going out with the engineers on the dam, and they had got hit by that IED. I don't remember which platoon you were with. I think you were with Rainmaker. I'm not 100% sure. But we ended up evacing those engineers, and I don't know what the call was made specifically, but we came back out and we picked you up with your headquarters vehicle, and we all, as map 2, went up to the cemetery in an overwatch position on Route Michigan, just a little bit on the west side of the arches there. And that was when the Echo Company highback got hit by the vehicle-borne IED. And I was standing close to you, maybe next to you, and you were the senior officer at the time. And I think we both had the same look on our face because that was the biggest explosion I'd ever seen. And you had tried to call over the radio and nobody answered at anywhere, battalion, nowhere. And you just looked at me and you said, fuck it, let's go. And so we did. We all went down there and evac those guys. Anything stand out for you?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I consider that the worst day I've ever seen, for sure.
Well, I'm definitely not trying to get you to relive any painful memories.
Well, it needs to hear. Everybody did a fabulous job, but you see that many Marines mangled like that. And it started out bad. I remember that mission. Again, it was one of those missions we knew we were going to get tasked with. The Army was. I just remember the Army being so hot to trot to clear that whatever that whole berm road was.
Yep.
Way elevated. Remember how high it was over the street, and so open. You could see for miles.
Yep.
Out into all those, like the rest of the whole city. It could have been anywhere.
Yep.
And I remember arguing about it extensively that morning. Like, what are we doing? Like at this point, that wasn't like it was early on either. We knew what the game was. Like these are not mines; these are
Nope.
command detonated. Like, and it's like it's not even like asphalt; it's dirt, raised berm. And the engineers with the metal detectors were like, "Don't you think they're going to get blown to shit?" They're like, "Yeah, well, he directed." And I was like, and they're like, they give you the, well, what's your plan then, Lieutenant? I'm like, well, let's get a tank with mine plow. How about that? We got all those tanks sitting over there. Seemed like it never did anything, right? They never did any kind of like.
I never saw a mine plow, that's for sure, but I certainly saw it when I went back in 2009. Yeah.
It's like that would have worked maybe. Like what was so harming? Like, no, those guys are in reserve. You can't have it. Like, okay. And then sure enough, those guys, that's exactly what happened. You get the beep and go down there. And I had somebody talked about it before. That's haunted me for a long time. I'd like to hear if those guys have made it alive. It wasn't good.
Recently, after doing this podcast, a few episodes, we found some confirmation. Both of them survived. And one of them even did well enough to get married, start a family, have a couple of kids afterwards. They're both still very injured, but they did survive.
Horrible. Yeah, and then whoever it was, you picked me up. I went out after that because we were securing. Because it'd been all those hours, and you got it done. You'd secured that whole thing. And again, the army brigade or whatever was like dead set on it. Like we were doing it.
Yep.
And then we had the ends of it overwatch position, and at the cemetery or whatever after it was cleared. And again, we drove by that vehicle several times, going and coming. Yep. And then I agree with you that was a mushroom cloud. I've never seen anything close to that big of an explosion. And then, but my hang up was, I knew if we left that position, there was a good chance they were going to scrap the whole thing and make us clear that whole route again, because they'd been so adamant about clear it and then don't leave that post unless somebody comes and relieves you, or they were going to make us do it again, and like the thought of doing that again,
that now makes sense now, because I remember talking to you and you were on the radio and I was like, I don't know what we're doing.
Like if we leave this spot even for like an hour unattended, they were going to make us clear the whole route again.
Okay.
And then I agree with that's exactly what I remember, that the battalion, nobody was saying anything. And I remember we flipped it over to Echo Company's TAC. And then finally that lieutenant got on the hook, and he was a combat replacement. He was a brand new second lieutenant, just got to the country for Woboleski. He'd been killed on the 6th, 7th.
Yep.
He only been there a week, and it was Panic at the Disco on the radio,
Yeah.
And the size of that explosion, and y'all were sitting there like, we got to go help them. So like, let's go. Like, was taking the combat outpost.
Yep.
And you saw the scene there when we rolled up.
Yep.
What that thing did, the nuts and bolts and washers and shit. But y'all, according to area, y'all just immediately each vehicle commander, each truck. I remember, I could see it plain as day in my mind right now. Y'all just pulling guys off and throwing them in the trucks and taking them to combat outpost. And we covered the other ones up. A couple of those guys made it. That y'all evac'd back, I think.
A few did. Yeah. Three were dead right there. One was pronounced when we got to combat outpost. I think 3 got evac'd, and the 3 lived that got evac'd. Yeah. I don't know in what state of life, but they lived.
And then the other thing, I remember, and to this day, I was extremely proud of what y'all did after that. The colonel showed up, and of course we had the dead Marines and Whiskey Tour, but we all volunteered to take care of those remains and not allow the Echo Company guys to have to do it, because it was their buddies, and we didn't know personally a lot of these guys. So I think we at least put a little bit of that separation to spare them from having to do that. And of course, that was during the whole time where Echo Company was already ragged out pretty good, so they had all kinds of problems remember guys like their boots were getting worn out and they were switching boots
Yes.
among each other and like not changing their dog tags. So you'd have wounded and dead Marines coming in and they're checking their dog tags and it's not the right guy. It's just,
I don't know that I remember that, but
he'd swap boots with his buddies in other platoons and squads.
No shit.
And that had been a mess with a couple of casualties, and they hadn't been, there were reports that the double dogs didn't have their like IDs in their cargo pockets and stuff.
Sure.
So I remember we had to open those body bags and go in there and check.
I do remember that
those things would correct.
Yeah.
Before we loaded them up on the colonel's vehicle and sergeant major's vehicle, I believe, to evac. So that it's not ideal, obviously.
Right.
Thank God there was no secondary or other blaster. We've been up shit creek, but I felt like at that point we were like, "What are you going to do?" Like, this is such a disaster. And it didn't look like they were going to be able to get a hold on it in the state that platoon was in. That Sergeant Coleman's out there.
Yep.
I think you had Timmy or whatever. One of those interpreters, like, it was his first day there, and he just quit that night because he was like, "Nah, I'm not doing this." Spooked him.
Yeah.
And I think y'all got over the other half of second platoon was on the other end of that OP, and I believe they made their way down, or at least a section of them did, to cover the cemetery portion.
Oh, they might have.
That. So they didn't make us end up, clearing all that after the rest of it. But
I could be wrong, but it might have been us.
No, we were split because so again, this is why I was talking to you instead of Lieutenant Stevens. He was with the other section.
He was with the other side.
That does make sense.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, all of it together, the engineer thing fucked up, and then that deal. And obviously, they were waiting for the target they wanted, right? Because we drove by so many times, largely in hardbacks.
Mm-hmm.
They were waiting for a high back filled with dudes, and a softer target to get a bigger bang out.
The first time I drove past it, there was two guys next to it. The second time I drove past it, I was like, that doesn't look right. We drove to the other side of the road. Sledgehammer called it to us and said, "Do you see that?" And then they called it in, and then it didn't matter. It was still there. Yeah. They definitely waited for high backs. And
I do remember somebody getting it called into battalion and then being pissed that like Echo didn't either get that word or didn't heed it.
Right.
Because we knew kind of where it was in the direction when we were sitting over that on top of the thing. And then when the thing went up from there, we're like, that's it. Why? What are we doing? Yep. Why did nobody told them to not cruise by that? And I guess they did not. But
sorry for dragging you back to shitty days. Any good memories from anything back in the hooch or anything? We'll switch gears a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot, and I think that it's been talked about a bunch on here. But you got you got the, not to get into post stuff, but you got all this adrenaline addiction and all that, which is definitely true. But I think what struck with me, what I remember missed the most, was just the complete like team atmosphere. I felt like that the company had, and you're never going to get that again. I don't think anywhere in life. With everybody have a singular focus for each other and for the mission. So on a day-to-day basis, I was just amazed at that level. That kind of team. It's like every day is a goal line stand from the 1 yard line in the Super Bowl with all your buddies, and you never get to that. You never get to that again. That's kind of singular focus. And I think that's what made all the difference. We talk about everybody adapting and overcome and reorganization and being proficient in weapon systems, and being ferocious and courageous and all that. But I think it was really that, just that team, it's us mindset that really carried the day. And then because of how crucial all the weapons platoons in the mission was for the battalion, carried the battalion.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been possible any other way. And then a bunch of raids in there, of course, through the summer and all that. It's been discussed. A lot of hard days there. I was in Fox before, so that was when the scout swimmers drowned in the river. Was a tough couple to stretch. And remember how many days we were out there just up and down, looking for them, and that kind of anxiety for knowing we're not going to stop looking because what if they got these guys? Yeah,
right.
Which is a tragic deal. That whole thing was a joke before. You know, if you remember that little island that was out there that they were going to get, they thought it was weapons cache or whatever.
It couldn't have been.
Y'all weren't there. They brought Fox Company, all the leadership, everybody was going on the raid over to Hurricane Point, and they gave this big brief to battalion how they were doing, and they were being all serious, like it was this big like it was Iwo Jima or something. We're do this big amphibious invasion of this island. And they hadn't done much of the time, so we kind of were messing with them, thinking you're making too big a deal of this. Just go right across that little island. It was tiny, and search it. So I'd actually made up a fake Fox Company amphibious warfare accommodation medal, what you get if you land on the beach at Peleliu or something. And I was gonna give it to some lieutenants over there that day. Had it in the truck, and then of course that happened. I'm like, all right, it's not funny anymore.
We all like dark humor, maybe not that dark.
That's good.
So, but yeah, that and then the gallows humor is what worked out in that deal, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I just remember we all of us in the CP had this running what would you rather kind of thing. You want to leave your left leg below the knee, or right arm. You had to make a choice. Balls were out. You couldn't do balls at all because clearly, but you just kept getting progressively more and more. Your nose or both big toes, and So I get pretty deep into that. I think that gallows humor really helps. That's kind of one of the ways that I was dealing with
absolutely.
I think that was pretty rampant across men we were in those situations.
Yep.
Actually, on the topic of gallows humor, my biggest memory of you actually is in that larger realm. You were out on one of the raids, and we had gotten a guy, and I can't remember the circumstances for it, but he was between the house and the wall, and he was a big boy, and it was you, me, and someone else, and you're like, get him, I need to see us. We need to take a picture. I had a camera, and you're like, we need to get a picture of him, and we need to record it, and I remember who it was. It was one of the smaller Marines. Anyways, he was too big, and you're like, go get him. And I was like, all right. I'm trying to wrestle this dude out from him. He was 2-something. It was a big dude. And I'm wrestling him out there, and I finally get him pulled out, but he's belly down. And you're like, you got to flip him over. And I was like, sir, I just give me a second. You were kind of rushing me. And I remember getting really pissed off. And I finally got up underneath him, and I was trying to hold him up, and you said, we'll take a picture. And I was like, sir, I'm holding him up. My camera's in my pocket. Please take it out. And I just remember being a little annoyed because I finally threw him down. I finally threw him down, and his head made a little bit of a coconut sound. And you were like, all right, hold on. I got the picture finally for you, but so that was anyways.
Some nasty business, yeah.
I was covered in blood, man. That was when I learned hydrogen peroxide takes blood out of the uniform. I was just absolutely covered in his shit. So, well.
Oh, well.
I imagine you were with Captain Weiler a whole lot. Have you maintained any kind of relationship with him? I know he's very important general at this particular time, but
No, no. I mean, I saw him, talk to him a little bit at the 10-year
Yeah.
deal that was there, but I think it's mostly because he was just I never felt real comfortable. I mean, I'm comfortable with him, but when he's still active duty. Of course, like he's a general now. He'll probably be the commander of the First Marine Division and the commandant. I wouldn't doubt,
Right.
if it goes that way. So I don't think he needed, I don't think he needed, a Duke to have a couple beers and start calling him up in the middle of the workday and try to shoot the shit about stuff. But no, Colonel Harrell for sure. Colonel Harrell, and then some of the other lieutenants, Dobbs. I hadn't talked to JD in a while either. Hope he's all right. I did for the first couple years or so, but I lost touch with him in the last about 10.
We talk on the phone about every little while. I talked to him maybe, I don't know, 8-9 months ago. I try to call him every couple of years, make sure he's still doing okay. Seems to be doing all right.
Nice.
Yeah.
I would assume so. But no, yeah, I haven't. I think Colonel Wilder or Captain Wilder, whatever he is, he was in he's a little different situation whenever you're.
Yeah, he's big
But
time.
I would like to hear some just like I like to hear from everybody from all these facets and different point of views. I would like to hear some more information.
I will I'll try to bribe him in any way I can, but he's very important, and I don't know what the law is around getting a general on an open podcast.
Yeah.
But we'll figure it out somehow.
Yeah. There's plenty of other voices to hear too. But
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Through the summer. Yeah, I don't know, have too much more on those that hadn't already been shared for like a lot of that summer stuff. There was some funny stuff, that mosque raid with whatever that interpreter's name that shot himself in the foot and all that. It's hilarious.
I think his name was Mike, but I'm not 100%
Mike,
sure.
Yeah, from Dearborn to Detroit or whatever.
Yep,
exactly. I do remember that being correct. Whoever said it, like he had gotten like some ungodly amount of money, $100,000 or something for it. He didn't want to. He didn't want to do it, but that whole thing was a fiasco.
Yes.
But I do remember the same thing. You get so annoyed and so frustrated that you knew that's what they were doing. That's where they were storing the stuff. That's where they were going back to patch themselves up and all that. So and that's where they were firing from when the push came to shove. And it was just like, oh, we're supposed to be the better people and like respect your. Come on, you just can't allow these havens,
right?
And expect it to not, So we started trying to get creative on ways to cut through that bullshit. And I remember a lot of times at the government center and all that. I mean, I was in on a lot of those meetings with the chief of police and the colonel and the OPSO and all that. And it's all just. I just got really sick of the two-faced lying nature of their whole culture and the way that they presented things. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So just day in, day out, and you knew these guys were working for the other side or half crooked or whatever. And of course, almost always panned out to be true that we'd end up killing or capture them in 2 weeks after we're supposed to make this big partnership or whatever we're going to do with them. So all that stuff through the summer.
Yeah, I do remember a whole lot more of that going on through the summer where we were like, for example, there was that political party that we were supposed to be sort of propping up that was going to help the elections. They were like, I don't know, the Party for a Better Iraq or whatever the hell they were called. And then we propped up the chief of police because the other chief of police was corrupt and he went to jail. So we got a new one. We built a new police station. They blew it up. And it turned out the new chief of police was in on blowing up the police station. Like there was a whole bunch of different things that just kept going on like that and never really stopped.
Yeah. And when you talk about information too, I supremely frustrated. All these guys that we'd capture on raids or other operations, and then it became pretty clear moving through late spring, definitely the summer, right, that they didn't really, the Army or whoever was in charge of that, didn't really have any kind of conclusive plan on the back end to like process and identify and interrogate all these detainees and like ascertain if they're bad guys or good guys or whatever. They would just like catch and release, right? Where you go do them and then they would let them out 3 or 4 days later.
Yep.
And we were never withholding any of that information. I don't ever remember them ever coming back and being like, a week later and be like, hey, by the way, those guys y'all picked up last Tuesday were so and so and so and so bad guys, and we got them here. Like, it never happened. You didn't even get any information. Right. And you try to like go ask them, like, hey, we're pulling there and just fucking ask these guys, like, where are they going after this? And like, I think they just stalled. That part of that was like, I think there was a time with like Abu Ghraib or all those scandals and stuff. So it complicated the nature of that whole thing. And then with the turnover to back to the Iraqi government or whatever, getting away from Paul Bremer and all that. So that was all rolled into the same thing. And I think they were making all of these deals that was at these much higher levels than we knew anything about. So, but they ended up being the on the ground to us, it was like, we just pick them up, or they don't even check them. Then they tell them some bullshit story and give them a bullshit name, and then cut them loose. And they're back in their same little hooch.
I remember a lot of those later on raids being nothing but somebody basically pulling a prank on their neighbor.
Right.
They're giving up a name just because they didn't like them, or, it's like swatting somebody now, like on game,
Yeah. And what I heard, like, I hear Colonel Harold knows a lot about it. He was a battalion commander in like 2-6 or something. I don't want to get it wrong, but later did another deployment in Afghanistan. I think that caught on across the whole Iraq and Afghanistan. That's kind of their MO.
Yep.
And he'll tell a lot of stories about they were doing the same thing at all kinds of levels later, and they end up just using it to call it against their rivals, and they're calling in drone strikes and destroying whole things. And it turns out it's just because, that's his business rival. And then they've been playing that game with whoever's occupying in there with big guns for.
I mean, that's the old. I was gonna say that's the old Taliban story from the '80s. They used to do that.
Right.
How do you take over your neighbor's fields? Well, you get him killed by the occupying military. That's
right. So I think they learned that and started doing basically swatting.
That's crazy.
But, I don't remember it being. I remember at that point, like, you didn't really care. Like, you just give us targets and we'll go get them. Maybe it'll help us. Is kind of what I was thinking. Because, like, how were they telling what was what? And like, if it happened to be, we never got any information about hardcore targets except for the Farhan brothers or Chaston Zarwigi or whatever his name was.
Zarqawi.
For days on end,
Yeah.
The rest of them was always pretty vague, and it usually be, it was always, you well know, like, take all military males, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, like, at the end, like, what did it matter if it was just a rival or not? Like, give us a target and we'll go hit it.
Right.
Maybe we'll get lucky and they'll actually try to resist this time, and we, and they never did usually.
No.
But the catch and release without any kind of little plan, started to get pretty grating, I think, for sure.
You moved into a little bit of the summer. I was going to ask you about what you remember of the left seat, right seat at the end of when we were handing off.
What was that? The 12th? Bad. I think that was the scaredest I've ever been, for sure. Being out with those guys.
That was
for sure. Because they didn't have any faith in them whatsoever.
No.
And I just remember feeling like naked out here, like, oh God, we just got a handful of us, and it's like these guys that know nothing. And a lot of the same stories, like guys wouldn't shoot. I remember same thing, just banging on some kid in the turret, like, you gotta shoot, man. RPG spinning. But that was it, the 12th with the Franks and Beans and the tanks and all that.
The 12th, the 12th is the tank that backed over the 2 Humvees.
I remember being I remember Whiskey 2, you and JD, and then being out there left seat, right seat.
Yep.
With that protection on that convoy. And I remember being IED, maybe as a RPG, but it wasn't nothing big. Yeah, and the Army lieutenant panicking and just monster trucked over.
Yep.
Those vehicles. I was in the COCs. I knew y'all were out, and the 2-5 lieutenant. Again, it was like screaming bloody murder, like Panic at the Disco on the radio. And I remember, I think JD just had to take the radio from him, and he got on the hook and finally gave us a coherent story. Like, hey, this guy just backed this tank up, and Like all the Marines got out, but he crushed it. And there's franks and beans all over the fucking street. And like, all right. And that's when the captain took off with another platoon.
Yes.
And then one point Dobbs went out with another platoon, I think. And those guys. I was the last one to go. And then everything was going off all over the city.
Yep.
I guess at that point. But everyone was stuck there at the government center.
Right, they were pulling us all in, is what I mean. Like, and that's what happened to me on the day before, on the 11th, when my truck got hit with the RPG. Is that they kept sending every last swinging dick to wherever the thing was, and they would oversaturate the area, and then we couldn't move around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then they did it the next the next day on the 12th. Like we were, whoever I was with, we were doing something else, and then we got called over. And I remember getting there, and the fight was already going. Anyway, it was
they just kept sending us, and then like there's only wherever it was, like be 4 or 5 with the whole platoon.
Yep.
Maybe platoon commander, a couple of
one per truck. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was the last one, and everybody was in the city. And then I think Dobbs mentioned it, that 2-5 company commander captain, he was in the COC, and I remember walking in, and I'm like, sir, your whole company is deployed in the fight in the city. I'm leaving right now with your last Humvee. Are you coming? And he was sitting there with his helmet just so tight, like pulled down and like gripping his M16. And he just looked at me and he's like, shook his head. And I'm like, you're not fucking coming. And he didn't. And I think Dobb mentioned it. He just went over, basically resigned. So I got a truck and we get out there. Yeah. And it was a ton of us. JD, Dobbs, the colonel, not the colonel, but the XO was out there. Yep. At the government center, all bunched up.
Yep.
And then I remember being it was a guy, and he didn't have a M16 at all. And he had this big old like Japanese tourist camera, like the big giant lens. And we're like, who the fuck is this guy? You're gonna get us all killed with this camera. And then Major Wiley, the XO, was like, calm down. That's the 2-5 XO Major. So I'm like, all right, fine. You're still an idiot for like Garcia and then they were up in that, and that's when we started taking the mortars.
Yeah,
that's when me and JD had to write a letter to thank Mr. Hesco for saving our lives. They had those Hesco barriers. We just like bam, dug down behind it, and that was like the mortars hit right on the other side. Like, Jesus. Thank you, Mr. Hesco, for inventing that. Whoever you are, if you're a real guy.
Yeah.
Of course they're wounded pretty bad.
I was going to say the lieutenant from the platoon we were with, he took an RPG fin to the leg, and he was combat ineffective at that point because it had lacerated the ligaments of his knee, and he couldn't even move.
Like right in the front, like patella tendon or whatever. It's like he was talking about it nonstop.
Yep,
that was what I remember. He was running his mouth talking like RPG went right there.
Yep.
And it spilled like I say, whatever it was, franks and beans, and the XO was so had to get the gravy train to combat outposts. And like, why is this so important? We could just maybe not. And then we just kept sending platoons. I remember Dobb and his guys went, and they got maybe 2 blocks down Michigan, and all hell broke loose.
Yep.
Getting shot at from where it was like, great. Somehow they made it. They shot their way back to combat outposts. And the mortars with fucked up his leg good.
Diaz.
Yeah. Diaz and Reeves both got hit a little bit. Diaz broke his leg, and he got vacked out.
Yeah. I remember him up in that tower, right? In the middle of the government center.
Yep.
I was trying to get up there when he got hit. Blew me off that ladder.
Get it?
Yeah.
I got up there right after that. And then of course the Humvee I was in, it blew out all 4 tires.
Yep.
And I think we were riding tail on Charlie on that. And then getting out of there when they were finally like, after we get mortared, of course, the XO was like, okay, I guess we can leave now. We're like, okay, yeah, we can leave now. Good plan. But I remember snaking our way down south and out and just RPGs spinning. And
because I remember Nyland and I were some of the last ones. So you must have been, the 3 of us must have been a part of that last, like, because my memory was
going so slow with the tires.
And
weaving around.
2-4 was some of the last ones there. We were holding while everybody
Well, they
2-5 got out, and then we were some of the last ones out.
So
We're the only
specific.
ones doing anything. Like, why was Diaz on that post?
Yep.
Well,
It should have been them. And then whoever, like Staff Sergeant Cook, was on the roof. I think of the one.
no,
like,
it was me.
because we're the only ones that will do it. Are you up there? Like,
It was me that was. I was basically up there by myself. There was a squad of them up there, but they weren't shooting. And I was just straight up plinking people. There's a open area on the backside, and it was just.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a target rich environment, and like they wouldn't engage. Like,
they just wouldn't fight. They wouldn't engage.
well, they had like this funny belief of what the ROE was at the time, where it was like they had to they're like, well, they have to be wearing black and actually shooting, and it's like they're carrying ammo cans. They're the enemy.
Yeah.
The guys that covered our exfil from that was not even Marines. It was the triple canopy contractors that allowed us to even pull out of the government center. I don't know if you remember that, but they pulled their sub out and started firing down the road just so we could get out. So
that was a long ass way back.
Yeah, it was. We took a very long way around.
Yep.
But at least that was enough. They're like, all right, nobody's going out again. Like, we're not sending any more of our guys out. No more of this. Because before that, I think the day before that, I was on a left seat, right seat, or maybe I don't know if it was the 11th or one of the right seats from combat outpost, and check to see, does everybody have, all your drivers have MVGs, blah blah blah, all this, and it was some lieutenant, headquarters company lieutenant from the 2-5, and the whole movement was just such a shit show in the dark on the way back, and it turned out those guys didn't have, like, half of them didn't have MVGs, the drivers. And I remember just getting back and getting out and seeing that and being so pissed and laying into this guy. And then that's when we figured out they lost the whole back of the other section of the whole platoon with Diaz and all them. They took a different turn, like at the tits or something, and they were still out in the city. But these guys were acting like it was some kind of training operation, like everything's gonna be all right, like we just can do these and get our feet under us. And we're like, no, man, like we're all gonna die today if you don't get your shit together. But yeah, that's the worst feeling, just being out. I can't imagine how bad does that feel, being in a fighting unit out, like in the army or something else, where you don't really trust these guys.
Yeah,
you know, I can't imagine doing a whole deployment with guys that you don't have full confidence in. No, they got your back, and they're gonna act aggressively, do what you can to help everybody. You know, and I just remember that feeling, like, this is so different. Like, didn't have this feeling at all whenever we were out with our crew. You know, like, people knew their jobs. You knew who you could count on them. 100%. And it was just totally the opposite with these guys. And you didn't know it was like, you know, I think I've heard these rumors that they told them, instructed them basically not to listen to anything we said.
Yep.
That's what they told us.
I think that's probably true. I mean, we're the magnificent bastards. I mean, I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
I was specifically told by one of the corporals that they were told not to listen to us too closely because we were just a bunch of cowboys.
Yep.
And that's the words that they use, cowboys. So
cowboys.
I was a little bit more rude about an interaction. And same thing. One of their sergeants told me the same thing. You know, you guys are a bunch of cowboys. That's what we were told. We're not supposed to listen to you. We're not going to do things the way you do it. Okay. All right.
Okay. Roger that. Yeah. But that's what I thought. So I thought actually being in the shit on that day would wake them up. You know,
right. No.
Like, okay, it's like, it seems pretty obvious what's going on now, but it just didn't dawn on them at all. Which was, well,
it didn't wake them up. I mean, again, the day literally the day before on the 11th, they got hit hard because my truck got completely. I was the only one that walked away from it. I mean, some of them, everybody else got evac'd out, and I think 2 of them died, and it didn't change. Like, they still did the same thing the following, like, less than 24 hours later.
Yeah, baffling. But I do remember being relieved that at least, like, say, that was what took it over the edge, and even the battalion was like, all right, you don't have to send any more of your guys out. All right, we're done with this left to right. Like,
I remember that 7-ton coming pretty quickly after we got back to Hurricane Point, and they're like, grab your shit, let's go.
Right.
And then showing up at Junction City.
Right. Well, I remember getting, I don't know what wave you were. I remember getting rocketed pretty good on the tarmac out at
Al
waiting
Assad.
for the flight at Al Assad.
Yeah.
And that was such a big base. I remember getting on that. We're like, they had swimming pools and shit. We're like, oh, they got a lot of land. Like, it should be good. You know, after being in such tight quarters in Hurricane Point.
Yep.
And we're all just, the whole damn company laid out on the tarmac. And here comes these giant rockets. Like, like, oh, they're going to get us right here on the tail end of this. And then the guy I remember the pilot doing those evasive maneuvers when he took off. I've never been in a plane like that where, you know, jerking it.
Yep.
But
well, putting a little bit of a bow on this, what'd you do when you got home? Did you take leave and go home, or did you stay and hang out? It sounds like you got out in May, so you had a fairly short time after we got back.
Fairly short. Yeah, I got out in May. Yeah, I took the 30 days and took my girlfriend at the time to Italy for like 2 weeks. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. That was a bad idea. It was like so many people in Rome. I was like, ah, like
yeah.
I guess you know, because you know it's been discussed, but they did. It's almost unimaginable how dirty they did us on the tail end of that getting out. I mean, with nothing,
right?
You know, no decompression time. Like, why didn't we stop in Kuwait or somewhere else and like just give us a bunch of pallets of beer and give us like 2 weeks to like chill out and like decompress?
Yep.
They just flew us, dropped, you know, 2 days later, drop us back on in the tarmac, and we're out there drinking tequila shots in the parking lot at Camp Pendleton, and then everything else that happened. There's a lot of tragedies that happened in the next couple of days for people.
Right. Well, I didn't sober up for like 4 months. I think I was nursing something for like 4 months straight. And honestly, it's 18 months and I talked to my family.
They got a little different.
We don't talk about 2005 very much.
Yeah. At least that year. It was a lot worse, a lot more than that after that. But it's been I don't know. I've heard it's good in a lot of ways, obviously, to hear these echoes from all these other Marines in the same situations for them for 5 years later, 10 years later. I think a lot of those things repeated for a lot of us. And thank God, a lot of that is more amazing that most of us made it through that than even the fighting, perhaps. You know.
Agreed.
I know that's true for myself. You know.
Yeah,
and it's still not over. You know, it still could get me.
I was gonna say I don't know that it ever ends. I do think that is. We talked to Moselle and he had his episode and he's had a whole bunch of things, but he used a very specific phrase where it's a thought in his head that he makes pay rent. So like anytime it bothers him, he knows that he has to push it away. Like I appreciated that analogy a lot. And I've said that back to a few different people. It doesn't really go away, right? It changes over time. I also find it very telling that we have, like you said, there's a chance that General Weiler will be the Commandant of the Marine Corps someday. He's really he's doing really well. He's climbing the ranks quite well. We've produced a lot of sergeant majors. Like we've had a lot of successful dudes that have done a lot of really good stuff. And so it's neat to see, even with all the struggles that people have had, that a lot of dudes have been able to climb their way out and do really well.
And I think that's a testament to the character. A lot of those guys, you talk about all those sergeant majors and that have come out of that. That's a testament to the truth of their character at the time, and you know that we were right about them,
right?
But to feel that way, that admiration about it, and to be able to continue to do that, it's amazing for the whole time. I can't imagine. I can't imagine having to stay in the battalion then and having to pump back to Oki. I don't think I would have survived that.
Nope. No, I'm amazed that they did. I'm amazed as many of them did as well as they did. Because
that would have been.
That year that we spent in Okinawa was almost the end of my liver in the first place. It would have definitely been had I stayed.
Exactly. So, but all the success in all kinds of fields. It's amazing. It's good to hear those stories. I'd like to reconnect with some of those other guys. And I talked to Granger. He was my gunner, and when I took the headquarters vehicle out, and I talked to him at the 10-year. He's like a doctor, I believe, somewhere. I think in Arizona somewhere.
So he was a surgeon. He actually left the surgical field and was a law enforcement officer last I talked to him. Nice. He decided medicine wasn't for him and became a law enforcement officer in Southern Arizona.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's doing very well.
Great, smart kid. Tons of other ones, but so impressed. Well,
you
get some.
You've used a lot of great words. I was gonna try to put a cap on it, I guess. You've used a lot of words like pride and courage, and that feeling of teamwork. I know you were an athlete, right? And so team is one of those things, like you get a little taste of it as an athlete, and then you get it in a deep sense when you get over there in combat in a way that like you said, you'll never ever see again.
Absolutely.
It sounds like this stuff still means at least a considerable chunk to you. And I know you guys, as our leadership, meant a lot to us, and it's going to mean a lot for everybody to hear what you have to say. When you look back 20 years later, what do you tell people about all this? How do you make sense of it?
Well, without getting into some kind of big existential question about it.
You can if you want, but yeah, you don't have to.
I think I did an amazing job of it. To be honest with you, I think in large part we're just kids doing the dirty work for the mistakes of old men. I think the Marine Corps is amazing, and the Marines are amazing in it. They're called to do it. I think we all thought, after 9/11 and whatever you felt when you were growing up, or why people joined the Marine Corps, joined in infantry in the battalion, we all had a feeling, and I don't know if we'd necessarily thought that we were just going to get stuck doing this kind of mission, or in this kind of scenario. And yet I struggled with that, obviously, a lot of nobody wants to feel like anything was in vain or, mistaken. Sure. And I think both things can be true, that's the way it goes. Now I was pleased, or if that's the right word, at least saw these things, to hear these stories and things to come out with the book and stuff, to see actually make sure that everybody, especially everybody in weapons or 2-4 for sure, but weapons for sure, understands now that we have this 20 years of vision on it, exactly what it was you actually accomplished and what the stakes actually were, especially relative to all these other battalions, all these other AOs throughout the whole war on terror, so you probably get that. You run into people in the street, somebody wearing a big veteran's hat and crap with stuff all over it. And I don't know how many times you I'm just going to go ahead and talk to this guy and see. And then 2 sentences into the conversation, you realize that this guy is just a poser and he has no idea, and whatever it is. And then, so just kind of quit talking to people, quit asking about it. 'Cause I don't think they're going to understand. Even another 5th Marines battalion in different time or different AO, completely different. So I think it really has hammered home just the fact how unique this particular group of men was in this particular time. It's exceptional across the board in military operations, especially for our generation. And that's not an easy thing to say. It seems like you're bragging about stuff, but I think the the stories and the evidence is clear at this point. If we want to argue who had the toughest fight, I think we got a pretty good argument for that, for wherever that's worth. But I think it's important that people know themselves, the Marines know exactly how special that stuff was and is. So, and I'm always been impressed. I don't know how many y'all talked to a lot more people than I have, but I can't think of one person that, whether they did just this one deployment or 2 or 6 or 10, everybody has a special place in their heart for 2-4 Ramadi in 04. 100%. Some of these guys have been on 9 deployments and seen all kinds of shit, and every single one of them, to a man, basically has a special reverence for the Marines that were with us and what we had to go through and how we withstood it. And then it's obvious, some people. The book guy asked me like, how'd you feel a couple years later, when the news came out that, Ramadi had fallen again and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, I think it's pretty evidence, like it's mentioned before here, like right after that, there was never less than like 4 or 5 battalions in charge of the whole city.
Yes. There's
So,
6 months after left.
Oh, come on, man. So I think that speaks for itself in general. Like, and the fact that no one ever considered like, hey, 2-4 can't do it. And like, maybe they should have, but we held it up. I think that's something to be proud of. And I think something that's exceptional to the rule. And people should know that.
That's great. That's actually a great way to wrap it up, I think. Thank you. Thank you for all the stories. And I have a feeling that this will probably be one of the most popular recordings that we put out, because I don't know that anybody got to talk to you much in 2004. We were also damn busy. And as the executive officer, I imagine you did more than most people know behind the scenes. So thank you for that too. Thanks for keeping us together realistically and keeping shit working. 1,000%. I wouldn't even be able to pay back that debt if I knew how. So
nope. We've said it multiple times, but be able to say it directly to you. I knew then, and as time has gone on, the only reason why we were able to get through that deployment was because of the leadership that we had, especially in weapons company. We had amazing leaders that believed in us and allowed us to do what was necessary, and had nothing but faithfulness in our skills and ability. And so thank you for that.
I appreciate that. But it was you. That's what you're talking about. The leadership. No, really. It couldn't have been done. The NTOs on that. It's just an unbelievable task. So, and thanks for doing this. It's a good thing. I'm interested in hearing some more perspectives.
If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe for future episodes on your favorite podcast service.